Senator Whish-Wilson.
Peter President, it kind of feels a bit like the Twilight Zone in here this afternoon, last day of Parliament for the year. I'm hearing Conservatives rally against laws that crack down on crime. I always thought it was their mantra to be tough on crime, and here we finally have the holy grail for so many people before us today, what were commonly called the Gatekeeper or Tranche 2 laws to crack down on money laundering and terrorism financing in Australia. I'd like to, perhaps remind my colleagues across the chamber that it was actually Senator Brandis who had a red-hot go at bringing these laws in nearly 10 years ago, when at the same time in 2015, internationally the Financial Action Task Force, which was the world standard-setting body for anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing, released a report, and it was called the Mutual Evaluation Report. And it said Australia is seen as an attractive destination for foreign proceeds, particularly corruption-related proceeds flowing into real estate. From the Asia-Pacific region, other international bodies have highlighted the inadequacy of Australia's anti-money laundering and CTF framework, including the OECD in 2017 and the IMF again in 2019. The head of ASIC at the same time period said Australia was a haven for white-collar crime. And these laws have been sitting there waiting for this parliament to pass. We're only one of 6 countries internationally that don't have these laws. And it's a really good day today to ask why haven't we had these laws. Well, I spent a good 5 years or more trying to get these laws. And I congratulate Senator Shoebridge for the great work that he's done on this bill today and on the inquiry into this bill. I'd like to also acknowledge on this point previous Leader of the Greens, Tasmanian Senator Christine Milne, who was also campaigning on these laws, Senator O'Neill from the Labor Party, who's played an important role in getting this legislation before us today, and of course Senator McKim, who had the Treasury portfolio following myself. It's been a long road for the Greens to get these laws. We had a fantastic Senate inquiry in 2019 that reported in 2022. I'd recommend senators read it. It was called Greenfield's Cash Cows and the Regulation of Foreign Investment in Australia. And we had a fantastic case study of a Chinese crime syndicate who spent nearly $30 million of laundered money to buy real estate in Tasmania, including a resort and highly productive farmland. And it was front-page news when this syndicate was busted, and Mr Peter Dutton at the time, there's a big spread with him saying, we're cracking down on the crooks. It's not fair that these foreign crime syndicates are competing with Australian mums and dads to buy real estate in Australia. We know money laundering is a significant issue in this country. And then we found out afterwards in the Senate inquiry it wasn't to do with any of the work of the federal police or our agencies, AUSTRAC or anyone else. The Chinese government actually gave the Australian Federal Police the dossier with all the information on these crooks. They'd been tracking them and asked us to bust them. So that's exactly how it happened. So we looked at that. Like, what are the inadequacies in our laws that we can't actually work out whether laundered money is going into Australian real estate? It's just one example. And of course, the evidence kept coming back to the fact that the gatekeepers, through the Royal Commission into Banks and Financial Services and other inquiries and reports, we know that the beneficial owners of the companies and the shady shell structures that were being used to channel this kind of money weren't being reported to AUSTRAC. So real estate agents and lawyers and accountants right around the country didn't have to report the beneficial ownership details to AUSTRAC. The Greens had wanted to see a beneficial ownership register. That's something we've campaigned on for nearly 10 years as well, to try and crack down on crime. And today's legislation has been a long time in the coming. And as Senator Shoebridge said, it's not perfect. I certainly hope the Senate supports Senator Shoebridge's amendments to try and improve these. But let's be really clear here. You can talk about $13.9 billion in regulatory costs, but real estate agents, accountants and lawyers have known this legislation has been coming for a long, long time. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, I initiated the Senate inquiry that looked at money laundering. I was on the Four Corners report, the parallel universe, talking about the impact of this on the Australian economy. These groups have campaigned and lobbied really hard, and I mean ferociously, to prevent this legislation from going ahead. So $13.9 billion in regulatory cost. What about the cost? The opportunity costs and other costs associated with money laundering in this country, not to mention, obviously, the financing of terrorism. Seriously, hasn't even been mentioned once by the coalition. Well, I never thought I'd see a day that they came in here and said, listen to Senator Cash's contribution today, so ferociously campaigning against laws to crack down on crime. Really, this is it. This is not perfect, but it's the best we've got. So I just wanted to finish by also making a personal reflection on Fraser Brindley, who used to work in my office before he left to go and work in Senator McKim and Adam Bant's office. Fraser was always pushing me, and I know he pushed his other senators that he worked for, to take this issue seriously. And it was because of Fraser that we had the Senate inquiry. We got the Four Corners program up into this, amongst other things. I'd like to also acknowledge the book, the Lucky Laundry, Mr. Lynch, who wrote that book. I kind of contacted him afterwards and thanked him very much for all the quotes he'd put in there that I'd made in terms of this issue, and let him know that actually it was Fraser's work, and it really should have been Fraser in that book. And that's the time as a boss you feel a bit guilty that you're the one who's actually out doing the work, but a lot of the hard work's been done behind the scenes by people like Fraser. So I hope the Senate supports these laws. They've been a long time in the coming. They're not perfect, but they're certainly a step in the right